Thunder rolled, lightning flashed. The veil of the temple was rent from top to bottom. The venerable initiator, in his robes of blue and gold, slowly raised his jeweled wand and pointed with it into the darkness revealed by the tearing of the silken curtain. "Behold the light of Egypt!" The candidate, in his plain white robe, gazed into the utter blackness framed by the two great lotus-headed columns between which the veil had hung. As he watched, a luminous haze distributed itself throughout the atmosphere until the air was a mass of shining particles. The face of the neophyte was illumined by the soft glow as he scanned the shimmering cloud for some tangible object. The initiator spoke again. "This light which ye behold is the secret luminance of the mysteries. Whence it comes none knoweth, save the Master of the Light. Behold him!" Suddenly, through the gleaming mist a figure appeared, surrounded by a flickering greenish sheen. The initiator lowered his wand and, bowing his head, placed one hand edgewise against his breast in humble salutation. The neophyte stepped back in awe, partly blinded by the glory of the revealed figure. Gaining courage, the youth gazed again at the Divine One. The form before him was considerably larger than that of a mortal man. The body seemed partly transparent, so that the heart and brain could be seen pulsating and radiant. As the candidate watched, the heart changed into an ibis, and the brain into a flashing emerald. In its hand this mysterious being bore a winged rod, entwined with serpents. The aged initiator, raising his wand, cried out in a loud voice, "All hail thee, Thoth-Hermes, thrice greatest! All hail thee, Prince of Men! All hail thee who standeth upon the head of Typhon!" At the same instant a lurid writhing dragon appeared, hideous monster, part serpent, part crocodile, and part hog. From its mouth and nostrils poured sheets of flame, and horrible sounds echoed through the vaulted chambers. Suddenly Hermes struck the advancing reptile with the serpent-wound staff, and with snarling cry the dragon fell over upon its side, while the flames about it slowly died away. Hermes placed his foot upon the skull of the vanquished Typhon. The next instant, with a blaze of unbearable glory that sent the neophyte staggering backward against a pillar, the immortal Hermes, followed by streamers of greenish mist, passed through the chamber and faded into nothingness. According to Iamblichus, Hermes was said to have authored an immense number of works, a total so vast that it would be impossible for any single person, even one endowed with divine authority, to achieve. Manetho gave an even greater estimate, further emphasizing the extraordinary nature of the claim. Hermes was credited with revealing to humanity a wide range of arts and sciences, including medicine, chemistry, law, art, astrology, music, rhetoric, magic, philosophy, geography, mathematics, especially geometry, anatomy, and oratory. The Greeks similarly celebrated Orpheus for such vast contributions. In Biographia Antiqua, Francis Barrett described Hermes as a man in whom the divine presence was fully manifested, as shown in his writings and in the Poimandres. These works, Barrett stated, conveyed the depth of the abyss and divine wisdom to future generations, proving Hermes to be both an inspired prophet and a profound philosopher, whose knowledge came from God and heavenly realities rather than from human teaching. Hermes' immense learning led many to identify him with other ancient sages and prophets. In ancient mythology, Bryant connected Cadmus with the Egyptian Thoth, noting that both were regarded as Hermes and credited with the invention of letters. Some scholars believe Hermes was the figure known to the Jews as Enoch, called by Kenealy the second messenger of God. The Greeks incorporated Hermes into their own mythology, and the Romans later knew him as Mercury. He was honored through the planet Mercury, the celestial body nearest the sun, just as Hermes was seen as the being closest to God and the divine messenger. Egyptian art often depicted Thoth holding a wax tablet, recording the results in the Hall of Judgment where the souls of the dead were weighed before Osiris, a scene of profound symbolic meaning. To Masonic scholars, Hermes holds special significance as the originator of their initiatory rites, derived from the mysteries he established, with most Masonic symbols being hermetic in nature. Pythagoras is said to have studied mathematics with the Egyptians, gaining from them the knowledge of symbolic geometric forms. Hermes was also celebrated for reforming the calendar, extending the year from 360 to 365 days, setting a standard that remains in use. Known as thrice greatest, he was considered supreme among philosophers, priests, and kings. Notably, the final poem written by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow was a lyrical tribute to Hermes. In his History of Chemistry, James Campbell Brown wrote that after leaving behind the Chaldean and earliest Egyptian periods, times from which only physical remains survive, but no written record or known names of chemists or philosophers, history enters the period when books began to appear, first inscribed on papyrus rather than parchment or paper. Among these early Egyptian works was a collection attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, who may have been an actual learned man or perhaps a symbolic figure representing a long tradition of authors. Some identified him with the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian Thoth, or Tuti, the moon god often shown in ancient art with the head of an ibis and the disk and crescent of the moon. To the Egyptians, he was the god of wisdom, writing, and the keeping of time. Because of the deep reverence held for Hermes by early alchemists, chemical literature came to be called Hermetic, and the term hermetically sealed still describes the complete sealing of a glass vessel by fusion, as practiced in chemical work. The same linguistic root appears in the Hermetic medicines of Paracelsus and in the Hermetic Freemasonry of the Middle Ages. Of the works believed to have originated from Hermes, two stand out above the rest: the Emerald Table and the Divine Poimandres, also known as the Shepherd of Men. An unusual fact about Hermes is that he was one of the few pagan philosopher-priests who escaped the full hostility of early Christian writers. Certain church fathers even conceded that he showed considerable wisdom, remarking that, had he been born in a more enlightened era and instructed in their faith, he might have achieved true greatness. Clement of Alexandria, one of the rare preservers of pagan tradition whose works have survived, recorded in his Stromata nearly all that is known about the original 42 books of Hermes and the high regard in which they were held by both the ruling powers and the priesthood of Egypt. Clement gave a detailed description of an Egyptian ceremonial procession, illustrating how their philosophy was expressed through sacred ritual. First came the singer, carrying a symbol of music. This figure was required to know two of the books of Hermes, one containing hymns to the gods, the other outlining the rules for the life of the king. Following the singer was the astrologer, holding a time-measuring instrument and a palm branch, the emblems of astrology. He was to be well versed in 4 astrological works of Hermes, one describing the arrangement of the fixed stars, another on the conjunctions and appearances of the sun and moon, and the remaining 2 on their risings. Next advanced the sacred scribe, distinguished by winged ornaments on his head, and carrying a book, a ruler, ink, and a reed pen. He was expected to master the hieroglyphic script, along with cosmography, geography, the courses of the sun and moon, the 5 planets, a detailed description of Egypt, the chart of the Nile, the vestments of the priests, the layout of sacred places, and the measures and objects used in holy ceremonies. After him came the stole-keeper, bearing the cubit of justice and a libation cup, knowledgeable in matters of instruction and sacrifice. 10 books were devoted to the veneration of the gods, including sacrifices, offerings, hymns, prayers, processions, festivals, and similar rites. At the rear walked the prophet, openly carrying a water vase, accompanied by attendants bearing loaves. As the head of the temple, he was responsible for learning the 10 hieratic books, which contained the laws, the nature of the gods, and the complete training of the priesthood. The prophet also oversaw the distribution of the temple's revenues. In total, there were 42 books of Hermes considered essential, 36 containing the full scope of Egyptian philosophy, studied by those in the procession, and 6 medical works, kept by the pastophoroi, dealing with anatomy, disease, surgical tools, remedies, ailments of the eyes, and matters concerning women. One of the great losses to philosophy was the destruction of nearly all these 42 books. They vanished during the burning of Alexandria, as both the Romans and later the Christians understood that these writings had to be destroyed before Egypt could be subdued. A few volumes survived the flames, hidden deep in the desert, their resting place known only to certain initiates of the secret schools. While Hermes still dwelt among mortals, he entrusted his chosen successors with the sacred Book of Thoth. This work was said to contain the secret processes through which the regeneration of humanity could be achieved, and it also served as the key to all his other writings. Its exact contents remain unknown, except that its pages were inscribed with strange hieroglyphic figures and symbols, granting those who understood their use immense power over the spirits of the air and the subterranean gods. The mysteries taught that by applying certain hidden processes, specific areas of the brain could be awakened, extending human consciousness and allowing one to behold the immortals and stand before the higher gods. The Book of Thoth explained the means by which this awakening was accomplished, making it truly the key to immortality. Tradition holds that the book was kept in a golden casket within the innermost sanctuary of the temple, secured by a single key held only by the Master of the Mysteries, the highest initiate of the Hermetic tradition, who alone knew its contents. With the decline of the Mysteries, the Book of Thoth was lost to the ancient world, yet its faithful initiates carried it, sealed within its sacred chest, to another land. It is said to still exist, guiding the disciples of the present age into the presence of the immortals. No further details can be publicly revealed, but the unbroken line of succession from the first Hierophant taught by Hermes endures, and those truly prepared to serve the immortals may yet find this priceless work if they seek it with sincerity and persistence. Some claim that the Book of Thoth is in fact the mysterious tarot of the Bohemians, an emblematic volume of 78 leaves, long held by the gypsies since their exile from the ancient temple of the Serapeum. Secret histories identify these gypsies as former Egyptian priests. In the world today, there are still certain hidden schools with the authority to initiate worthy candidates into the mysteries, and most trace the light of their altar fires back to the torch of Hermes. In the Book of Thoth, Hermes revealed to humanity the one way, and for countless generations the wise of all nations and all faiths have reached immortality by following the path he set in the midst of the world's darkness for the redemption of humankind. The divine Poimander of Hermes Mercurius Trismegistus is considered one of the earliest surviving Hermetic writings. Although not preserved in its original form, having been reworked in the early centuries of the Christian era and often mistranslated, it still contains many of the fundamental ideas of the Hermetic tradition. This work is composed of a collection of 17 incomplete writings, brought together and presented as a single whole. The second section, known as Poimandres or the Vision, is believed to describe the manner in which divine wisdom was first revealed to Hermes. It was after receiving this revelation that Hermes began his ministry, openly teaching the hidden truths of the invisible universe as they had been made known to him. The Vision is the most renowned of the Hermetic Fragments, presenting both a Hermetic account of the origin of the cosmos and the secret Egyptian teachings on the cultivation and awakening of the human soul. For a time, it was mistakenly referred to as the Genesis of Enoch, though this error has since been corrected. In preparing an interpretation of the symbolic philosophy concealed within the Vision, the writer consulted early and modern translations of the divine Poimander, along with other Hermetic works and esoteric commentaries drawn partly from surviving fragments and partly from the hidden teachings of the Hermetic sciences. To ensure clarity, the narrative form was adopted in place of the original dialogue, with outdated terms replaced by those in current use. Hermes, while wandering in a barren and rocky place, devoted himself entirely to meditation and prayer. Following the hidden disciplines of the temple, he gradually released his higher consciousness from the restraints of the bodily senses. Freed in this way, his divine nature unveiled to him the mysteries of the higher realms. Before him appeared a vast and fearsome figure, the great dragon, its wings stretching across the sky, radiating streams of light in every direction. In the mysteries, this dragon represented the universal life. Calling Hermes by name, it asked why he pondered the mystery of the world. Overcome with awe, Hermes fell prostrate before the radiant being and begged to know its identity. The dragon replied that it was Poimandres, the mind of the universe, the creative intelligence, and the absolute ruler of all, whom some identify with the god Osiris. Hermes then implored Poimandres to reveal the nature of the universe and the order of the gods. The dragon consented, bidding Hermes hold its image firmly in mind. At once, the form of Poimandres transformed, becoming a living, radiant light, the spiritual essence of the great dragon itself. Hermes was lifted into the midst of this brilliance, and the world of matter vanished from his awareness. Then a vast darkness arose, spreading until it swallowed the light. All was in turmoil. Around Hermes swirled a strange, watery essence, from which rose a vapor like smoke. The air was filled with vague moanings and sighs, as though coming from the light now enclosed within the darkness. His mind revealed to him that the light was the form of the spiritual universe, and that the churning darkness which engulfed it symbolized material substance. From the light that had been imprisoned there emerged a sacred and mysterious word, rising from the smoky waters and taking its place above them. This word, the voice of the light, lifted itself out of the darkness like a towering pillar, with fire and air following in its wake, while earth and water remained unmoved below. Thus the waters of light were separated from the waters of darkness. From the waters of light came the worlds above, and from the waters of darkness came the worlds below. The earth and water then mingled, becoming one, and upon their surface moved the spiritual word, called reason, stirring them into ceaseless motion. Once again the voice of Poimandres was heard, though his form remained hidden. "I, your God, am the light and the mind that existed before spirit was parted from substance, and light from darkness. The word that rose from the darkness as a pillar of flame is the Son of God, born from the mystery of the mind. That word is reason. Reason, the child of thought, will separate light from darkness and set truth in the midst of the waters. Know this, Hermes, and ponder it deeply. That which in you sees and hears is not of the earth. It is the word of God dwelling in the flesh. Divine light abides within mortal darkness, and ignorance cannot sever them. The union of the word and the mind brings forth the mystery known as life. As the darkness beyond you is divided against itself, so also is the darkness within. The light and fire that rise are the divine man, ascending by the path of the word. That which remains below is the mortal man, who cannot partake of immortality. Learn the mystery of the mind, for in it is the key to eternal life." The dragon's form appeared once more before Hermes, and the two gazed into each other's eyes for a long while, until Hermes trembled under the piercing look of Poimandres. Then, at the word of the dragon, the heavens opened, revealing countless powers of light, soaring across the cosmos on wings of streaming fire. Hermes beheld the star-spirits, the celestial rulers of the universe, and all the radiant powers that shone with the brilliance of the one fire, the glory of the sovereign mind. He understood that this vision was granted to him only because Poimandres had spoken the word. That word was reason, and through reason the unseen became visible. The divine mind, the great dragon, spoke again. Before the visible universe came into being, its form already existed. This was the archetype, held within the supreme mind long before creation began. Beholding the archetypes, the supreme mind loved its own thought, and taking the word as a mighty hammer, it carved deep hollows into primordial space, casting the shapes of the spheres within the archetypal mold, and sowing into these newly formed bodies the seeds of living beings. The darkness below, struck by the hammer of the word, was shaped into an ordered cosmos. The elements took their places, each bringing forth living creatures. The supreme mind, both male and female, brought forth the word, and the word, suspended between light and darkness, gave birth to another mind, called the workman, the master-builder, the maker of all. The dragon continued, "Thus was it accomplished, O Hermes. The word moved through space like a breath, and by the friction of its motion summoned forth fire. For this reason, fire is called the son of striving. The workman swept through the cosmos like a great whirlwind, setting matter into vibration until it glowed with heat. From this striving came forth the 7 governors, the spirits of the planets, whose courses enclosed the world. These governors ruled by the mysterious power of destiny, granted to them by the fiery workman. When the second mind, the workman, had shaped order out of chaos, the word of God rose from its prison within matter, leaving the elements without reason, and united with the nature of the fiery workman. Together they placed themselves in the heart of the universe, and set the wheels of the celestial powers in motion. This motion shall endure without end, for the beginning and the ending are one and the same. From the downward turned, unreasoning elements there emerged creatures without reason, for substance could not grant what it no longer contained, as reason had already ascended from it. The air brought forth winged beings, the waters gave rise to creatures that swam, and the earth conceived strange four-footed beasts, creeping things, dragons, composite spirits, and grotesque monsters. Then the Father, the Supreme Mind, being both light and life, fashioned a radiant universal man in its own image, not an earthly figure but a heavenly being dwelling in the light of God. The Supreme Mind loved this creation, and entrusted to him authority over all works and creations. The man, desiring to act, descended into the sphere of generation, and beheld the labors of his brother, the second mind, who sat upon the ring of fire. Having seen the works of the fiery workman, he also wished to create, and his father allowed it. The 7 governors, whose powers he shared, rejoiced, and each imparted to him a portion of its own nature. Longing to penetrate the circle's bounds and understand the mystery of the one seated upon the eternal fire, the man, already holding all power, bent down and gazed through the 7 harmonies. Breaking through the strength of the circles, he revealed himself to nature below. Looking into the depths, he smiled, for he saw a shadow upon the earth and a likeness reflected in the waters, both images of himself. Falling in love with his own shadow, he desired to descend into it, and in that instant the intelligent united with the unreasoning form. Nature, seeing his descent, embraced the man she loved, and they became joined. Thus the earthly man is composite, within is the sky man, immortal and beautiful, without is nature, mortal and perishable. From this union came suffering, for the immortal man abandoned reality for the darkness of illusion. Being immortal, he retains the powers of the 7 governors, as well as the life, the light, and the word, but as mortal he is subject to the rings of the governors, fate and destiny. Of the immortal man it is said that he is both male and female, eternally vigilant, never sleeping, and governed by a father who is likewise male and female, and ever watchful. This mystery remains veiled, for when nature was joined in union with the sky man, she brought forth a marvel beyond compare. 7 human forms, each both male and female, upright in stature, and bearing the qualities of the 7 governors. These were the 7 races, species, and cycles. Thus were these 7 men brought into being. Earth served as the female element, water as the male, and from fire and ether they drew their spirits. Nature shaped their bodies according to the human form, and man received from the great dragon both life and light. His soul made from life, his mind from light. These beings, holding immortality yet sharing immortality, remained in this state for an appointed span. They reproduced from themselves, for each was both male and female. But when the appointed time ended, the knot of destiny was untied by the will of God, and the bond of all things was set free. In the beginning, all living beings, including man, were hermaphroditic, but in accordance with the guidance of reason they were divided, males set apart from females, each placed in their own order. Then God addressed the holy word dwelling within the soul of all creation, saying, "Increase and multiply, all you, my creatures and works. Let the one endowed with mind know that he is immortal, and let him understand that the cause of death lies in the love of the body. Let him learn the nature of all things, for he who has recognized himself enters into the state of the good." When these words were spoken, Providence, aided by the 7 governors and harmony, brought the sexes together, joining them in union and establishing the generations, so that all multiplied according to their kind. Yet whoever, through the error of attachment, clings to the body remains wandering in darkness, bound to sensation and subject to the sufferings of death. But the one who understands that the body is but the tomb of the soul rises to immortality. Hermes then sought to know why ignorance alone should deprive man of immortality. The great dragon replied, "To the ignorant, the body is supreme, and they cannot perceive the immortality that dwells within. Knowing only the body, which is mortal, they believe in death, for they worship that which is both the cause and the reality of death. Hermes next asked how the righteous and the wise pass into the presence of God. Poimandres answered, "As the word of God has declared, so I say, the Father of all is life and light, from which man himself is made. Therefore, if a man comes to know and understand the nature of life and light, he shall pass into the eternal state of life and light." Wishing to know the path by which the wise attain eternal life, Hermes questioned further, and Poimandres said, "Let the man endowed with mind examine and learn from himself. Let him, by the power of mind, separate what is truly himself from what is not, and thus become a servant of reality." Hermes asked whether all men possessed mind, and the great dragon cautioned him, "Guard your words, for I am the mind, the eternal teacher. I am the father of the word, the redeemer of all men, and in the nature of the wise the word takes form. Through the word the world is preserved. I, Thoth, the father of the word, the mind, come only to those who are holy and good, pure and merciful, living with piety and reverence. My presence becomes their guide and their strength, for when I come, they at once understand all things and give worship to the universal Father. Before such wise and philosophic ones depart from life, they learn to renounce the senses, knowing them as the enemies of the immortal soul. I do not permit the corrupted senses to rule the bodies of those who love me, nor do I allow evil emotions or thoughts to enter them. I stand as a guardian, closing the gate to all harm and protecting the wise from their own lower nature. But to the wicked, the envious, and the covetous I do not come, for they cannot grasp the mysteries of mind and find my presence unwelcome. I leave them to the avenging spirit they themselves create within, for evil grows by its own power, afflicting man more fiercely with each day, until it destroys itself. The punishment of desire is the torment of never being fulfilled. Hermes bowed in gratitude to the great dragon for the wisdom imparted, and asked to know more of the final destiny of the human soul. Poimandres continued, "When man dies, the material body returns to the elements from which it was formed, and the invisible divine man rises to its source, the higher realm. That which is evil passes to the dwelling place of the demon, while the senses, desires, emotions, and bodily passions return to their origin, the powers of the seven governors, whose influence destroys in the lower man, yet grants life to the spiritual man. When the lower nature has been cast back into brutishness, the higher part strives once more toward its divine state. It ascends through the seven circles where the governors dwell, returning to each their lower powers in turn, to the moon, the gift of increase and decrease, to Mercury, cunning and deceit, to Venus, passions and desires, to the sun, ambitions, to Mars, rashness and boldness, to Jupiter, the craving for riches and accumulation, and to Saturn, keeper of the threshold, falsehood and malicious scheming. When the soul is stripped of all that it has gathered from the circles of the governors, it reaches the higher sphere, the realm of the fixed stars. Here, free from every illusion, it abides in the light, singing praises to the Father in a voice only the pure in spirit can comprehend. There lies a great mystery in this celestial realm, for the Milky Way is the seed-bed of souls. From it they descend into the circles, and to it they return again from the farthest wheel. Yet not all can ascend the ladder of the spheres. Some remain below, lost in darkness, bound to the illusions of sense and the weight of earthly nature. The path to immortality is arduous, and only a few attain it. The rest must await the appointed time when the motions of the universe shall cease, and the immortal sparks break free from the bonds of matter. But sorrow awaits those who linger, for they must return unknowing to the seed-bed of stars to begin again. Those who are saved by the light of the mystery, revealed to Hermes and entrusted to be given to mankind, shall return to the Father who dwells in the white light. There they surrender themselves to the light, are absorbed into it, and become powers in God. This is the way of good, known only to those who possess true wisdom. Blessed was Hermes, for to him alone among men had Poimandres, the light of the world, revealed himself. He was charged to go forth as a guide to those wandering in darkness, so that all in whom dwelt the spark of the universal mind might be awakened through the mind within him, and so their own mind be kindled. He was to establish the mysteries on earth, for they cannot perish so long as the mind endures, and the mind never fails. With these final words, Poimandres, radiant with celestial brilliance, vanished, uniting with the powers of the heavens. Lifting his gaze to the sky, Hermes blessed the Father of all and dedicated his life to the service of the great light. Thus he spoke to mankind, O dwellers of the earth, fashioned from the elements yet bearing the spirit of the divine man, awaken from the sleep of ignorance. Be watchful and mindful. Know that your true home is not in the dust, but in the light. Why yield yourselves to death when you have the power to partake of immortality? Turn back and renew your minds. Leave the false light behind and forsake corruption forever. Prepare to ascend through the spheres and unite your soul with the eternal light. Some who heard scoffed and turned away, binding themselves to the second death from which there is no return. But others fell before Hermes, imploring him to teach them the way of life. He lifted them gently, seeking no glory for himself, and with staff in hand he went forth to teach and guide, showing the path to salvation. Among humankind, he scattered the seeds of wisdom and nourished them with the immortal waters. At last, when the light of his earthly life began to wane, he charged his disciples to guard his teachings without corruption for all generations. The vision of Poimandres he set into writing, that any soul yearning for immortality might find the path within it. At the close of his account of the vision, Hermes wrote, The sleep of the body is but the watchful vigilance of the mind, and when my eyes are closed, the true light is revealed. My silence is alive with budding hope and filled with goodness. The words I speak are the blossoms and fruit borne by the tree of my soul. This is the faithful record of what I received from my true mind, Poimandres, the great dragon, the Lord of the Word, through whom God inspired me with truth. Since that time my mind has never left me. Within my own soul it gave birth to the Word. The Word is reason, and reason has redeemed me. Therefore, with all my soul and strength, I praise and bless God the Father, the life and light, the eternal good. Holy is God, Father of all things, the one before the first beginning. Holy is God, whose will is fulfilled by his own powers, born from himself. Holy is God, who has decreed that he shall be known, and who reveals himself to those who belong to him. Holy art thou who by thy word, reason, hast established all things. Holy art thou of whom all nature is but an image. Holy art thou who remain unformed by inferior nature. Holy art thou who art stronger than all powers. Holy art thou greater than all excellence. Holy art thou better than all praise. Accept these reasonable offerings from a pure soul and a heart stretched out to thee. O unspeakable, unutterable one, praised in silence! I beseech thee, look mercifully upon me, that I may not stray from knowledge of thee, and that I may enlighten those in ignorance, my brothers and thy children. Therefore I believe and bear witness to thee, departing in peace and trust into thy light and life. Blessed art thou, O Father, the man thou hast fashioned is sanctified with thee, as thou hast granted him power to sanctify others by thy word and thy truth. The vision of Hermes, like most Hermetic writings, is an allegorical unfolding of profound philosophical and mystical truths, whose deeper meaning can only be grasped by those who have been raised into the presence of the true mind.